Yeah, so episode 2, back here again with Kerdos. So we're talking about intent and need versus lead.
Yes, sir.
So the way I wanted to start it off is actually to kind of go back to some of my questioning when I used to go out to businesses and just to ask you, why are we talking about this today? But emphasis on the today. Why not 6 months ago?
Just too many businesses are like stuck in this trap, this hamster wheel, the marketing hamster wheel that so many demand gen specialists are talking about. And I think, we touched a lot upon the communication between, marketing and the CEOs believing in marketing strategy. And that's a lot of the reasons for it. But I think what we want to do is educate people who are always looking for more. But even when they expand the resource, even when they spend more on ads, even when they're doing more web downloads or something like that, that's not the fix.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost just educating on, building that word of mouth strategy that we were talking about last week. But at the same time, just trying to create more intent funnels and focus on what matters.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to kind of start in a similar vein to how we did last week. So to go at more of the top level stuff initially and then to delve into the depths of the subject a bit later on in the podcast. So I wanted to ask, how would you summarize each of those 3 categories for people that are not aware the difference between the 3?
Elaborate. Sorry. What do you mean?
So the 3 categories, so obviously we've got intent, we've got need, and we've got lead. How would you summarize those 3 categories for those people that don't know the difference between them?
So a lead for me is someone's contact information. It could be a response, it could be a web download, it could be a webinar attendee, and I think it's almost educating people that because they have done these things and because you've gone on Zoom info to get someone's details or you've purchased a data list doesn't mean that there's any intent to buy. Now, if you think about it from this point of view, someone who has gone through your website, they've done their research on your socials, they've then left their information, you've then had a conversation with them, they've clarified that they can afford you, they need your solution, and actually they've clarified clear timescales on and that you're the right fit. Demonstrates intent because they've picked up the phone, they've made that decision to choose you.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people, we've worked with a lot of these companies who are saying we've got lots of leads and we need you to follow up on them.
Okay.
And I'm instantly thinking this is contact information or like a webinar attendee of someone who's just being nosy or just someone who's trying to get some free insight, and they think that because this is what the marketing, if they've taught them that they get lots of MQLs for their sales team, we should get sales. And it's actually, well, no. There's a lot more that we can be doing to create intent with these people, nurture them in the right way, rather than just cold calling a list of people expecting that leads will turn into sales. It's just not the way anymore.
Yeah, 100%. There's really good insight there. And I guess like the next point would be, how do you categorize those people when they're coming in? So I know you touched upon off camera actually something that you did out in Dubai, a game which sounded interesting, which falls in alignment with the categorization of those different pieces there. So I wondered if you could expand on that and tell people about that game. Yeah,
it was quite funny actually, because that part of the world, I would say, there are some companies that are doing it right, but a lot of the companies are used to these quite spammy techniques, these repetitive high lead volume
benefit
barking. And I did this game, so I had 40 delegates in the room, and I said, right, okay, so we've got if someone has downloaded a white paper, does that make them an intent opportunity, or is that demonstrating just they're a lead? And everyone was going, oh, they've got intent. And I was like, right, okay, so why have they got intent? And it was funny, some of the answers were, well, they wouldn't download it if they weren't interested. Well, so they're interested in buying your services. And then they're like, well, maybe because they're interested in the subject. I went, no. Let's be real. How many of them intent leads, so you claim, actually end up buying? And they're like 19 leads to one person that probably will end up buying. And I'm like, well, that doesn't show intent then, does it? because if there was 19 people that downloaded that white paper for you to close one, it demonstrates actually the other 18 are probably just doing a bit of research.
Sure. What would you say the stats should be if there was intent? So you've got 19 people intent on buying. How many do you think should close? So that could potentially be a good way for someone to understand, actually, do these people have intent or not?
Well, it's hard to educate these businesses to get to a 1 in 1. It's impossible unless they started with this methodology. Even with us, it's difficult. We don't sit a lot of discovery meetings here, and if anything, actually, we rarely end up proposing business into even beyond our initial SDR stage. And actually, it's important to try and make these small step improvements. So, for example, working with this huge BPO organization, and they are fed up of trying to pack resource to try and increase their revenue, to increase their sales numbers. I've then told them, let's take a step back and reflect. And actually, I've promised them I'll probably make an improvement by 30% within 6 months. Not necessarily promised them, but I'm pretty confident they can make a minimum improvement at 30%. And it's changing that mindset. I think you only have to look back, right? If our close rates were anywhere between 1 and 6, 1 and 7, right? So it's kind of like 1 and 6, 1 and 7, 1 and 8 sometimes even higher. And it's because then, although that there's some form of need to grow, there's no necessarily intent to purchase the services, which then affects them close rates. So it's about taking the small steps. Creating that word of mouth strategy is a big one. Being a bit more thorough in the qualification stage.
I was going to say, how much of that do you put down to effective questioning within the qualification stage?
Yes and no. I mean, it's not necessarily just about the questions. It's about being honest. You're not trying to bullshit someone in asking a question in a salesy way. It's funny because I've been pitched multiple times recently, and it's funny that the SDR stage is very similar, where they're looking to... they're just looking to try and gather this insight that they think that they need, when actually what they need to do is go out on the road with their salesperson and really get to know what a salesperson needs to convert. Same with marketing. I think it's all about understanding actually what the salesperson needs. And I think a lot of time, marketing is the problem. Not all the time. Some marketers are doing a fantastic job, and we always compliment them that are doing it right, but actually it's this pre-qualification stage. It's almost just being a bit honest and being a bit ballsy in the response, actually testing people. Some people will just say that they can afford it. There's a difference between going, our prices start at $7,000. Is that achievable? To, okay, let's talk about this. You're not only going to need, $7,000 to start a campaign with us, but it's going to need, a continuation of that for the next however many months. And it's like almost getting them to realize that there's more of a commitment beyond it, and flushing out who's just saying, I can afford that to just look good, and who can actually genuinely afford it. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that, because they think it's going to affect the appointment numbers or the demo numbers. Yeah,
or the initial sale. They might feel that initial sale will never happen as a result of painting the bigger picture to that individual.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So once we've categorized, so we've gone into the 3 different categories that we're talking about today. Once we've categorized, I wondered how you would recommend you nurture or engage with those individual categories of businesses once you've put them in their righteous place.
So businesses should know their ideal client profile. It takes some new businesses a bit longer to find out who that is.
Sure.
And sometimes it's a little bit more broad than it probably than it should be. What I would then do is, once you've got your ideal client profile, speak to them and understand what they want from a business like yours when it comes to that point. I think communication is key. Getting your marketing to talk to your customers, getting sales to talk to customers, SDRs to talk to customers. We've actually got an approach sometimes with some of our clients where, before we even send a connection request, or engage via social prospecting, and we might actually just pick up the phone to them and go in with this real kind of honest human approach. And it's rare to start with a cold call first, but actually it's, what we're saying is that I've profiled your business, I've profiled your company, but I was about to send a connection request, and do you know what? I backed out because I didn't want to just be another connection request that you don't accept or you think, I'm going to sell to you. I just want to be clear. We work well in your industry. I want you to be aware of us as a brand, but I promise you I'm not going to sell to you.
Okay.
But I'm going to share a lot of educational content on what we're doing in your industry. And if you're ever in the market to purchase our services, we're here.
Sure.
That's a real different strategy. Yes, it's outbound. Yes, it's cold. And actually, it can take a long time to nurture this database. But what it does is you're then building relationships in your ICP.
Of course.
You're being industry specific, sharing content. You're doing it in the right way. You're doing it via podcasts. You're doing it via video. You're doing it via interviews, articles, all these ways that you can communicate with your audience, but give them something for free.
Yeah.
A lot of people that we give things for free end up realizing that they don't have the resource, the time, or they just can't be bothered to do it internally. So they end up coming to us, even off the back of our training. So if they're like, no, I want to build from within, you go in, you train them, you change this mindset, and then they still want to outsource to you because they see you now as an extension. That's trust. That's trust building. But I'd never had an intention to sell to these people, first of all. It was educate first, nurture, until intent is shown.
Okay.
And I think that where people fail is they make that initial effort to capture a lead. Someone's liked a post, or they've downloaded a white paper, or they've attended a webinar, and then they're quite salesy, and then they close the door when there's no interest at this time. Whereas actually, if you become a bit more revenue focused, it becomes a bit more long-term thinking, where you actually don't burn that data as well. I waffled on a bit there, but I hope
no, 100%. It's a good answer, and I think you've touched upon points of advice for every different stage of that journey. So I think that's going to be incredibly helpful for people. Thank you for your honesty there. And another thing which I was interested to get your thoughts on, and something that I've heard you touch upon a lot, is something that I'm actually not aware of. So Gong.
What an incredible company. They provide a tool which, plugs into, sales pitches, call recordings, etc. And it will be able to rank based on behaviours who's most likely to buy.
Okay.
Which will then almost tell you from them conversation, this person's 40% most likely to buy, etc.
Right.
I mean, have a look at it by all means, but this is now going on to, perhaps they might clarify it as not a mistake because they've made lots and lots of money, right? But they were the first company, the B2B company that works in the marketing space, to sponsor the Super Bowl. Okay. And just like me, watching the Super Bowl, and I see this wicked advert. It was crazy. You got to watch it. And I reckon in fact, I spoke to one of their SDRs. I inquired and I said, "What is this about?" And I was interested to know more because of the big statement that they made by sponsoring the Super Bowl.
Of course, yeah.
Advert was great. It was great use of marketing. And SDR comes on the line, and how did you hear about us? And I was like, good question. But I know someone who they're working with, which is why they asked that question. Now, what happened was I went through this kind of funnel of theirs, but what they didn't clarify is whether I'm an intent person. Yeah. They didn't flush out that I'm just someone who's interested to just see what the tool does. And I think that they probably burnt way too many hours doing this. Think about it. I am a guy in the UK. Super Bowl, is in America. I reckon there must have been well over 500,000 inquiries or something like that. I'd be shocked if it was underneath that. Now, you think about the hours that they used on the 500,000 people. Let's just pop a finger in the air that probably inquired. Then they spend all these hours in understanding whether there's intent-ish. It was pretty, without being rude, it was a poor attempt to qualify me out. And then I went through to a demo, and I was honest at the end in saying, Yeah, I don't. One, I've not budgeted for this. Two,
Yeah.
it's not something I'd probably need at this stage. It's probably later down the line when we've got other things in place that we want to prioritise. And actually, it ended up being, kind of a waste of the SDR's time, waste of the salesperson time. Now, that was 2 hours spent on me.
Yeah.
2 hours. Probably even preparation on top 2.5 hours. You times that by 500,000. That's a lot of hours.
A few hours, yeah.
And if I'll be honest, I reckon their close rate could have been 1 in 20.
Yeah. Sounds like if that, to be honest, if that experience has been across the board.
Yeah, and if you think about it, their AOV was somewhere in the region, I think it was like $5K US dollars or something like that. And again, I'm not disrespecting Gong. I think it's a great tool, but they just got that bit wrong, I think. And they're a prime example of of a lead form that can qualify out people.
Yeah.
That's a good way for tools like that.
So I was going to say, what should they have done differently in your opinion?
Yeah, I think a lead form could have been the first step.
Yeah.
The SDRs being, and I think perhaps they weren't prepared for the influx. Maybe they had to hire quite quickly, which then maybe it was I don't know.
Sure.
There might have been lack of training. Who knows? But the problem is that the SDR didn't quite push enough to understand whether I was qualified enough. And yeah, I can afford 5K, but it was like, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
Again, goes back to that need statement.
Yeah.
So it's all these little things that, the lead forms online on their website, really, making people aware that is their intent now? Is this ready? Are you ready for this now?
Sure.
What improvements do you want to make? Having a drop-down menu of multiple reasons why people buy. And just, I think what they didn't do is almost educate first what they do and how they benefit a company.
Yeah.
So I only inquired
because it
sounded interesting.
Yeah, for sure. There's a few things that you mentioned then which I find really interesting. One of the things that I think is amazing about this podcast as it grows is that a lot of the categories that we speak about or the topics that we speak about are going to intertwine. So you mentioned that this guy spent roughly 2 hours on demos, maybe half an hour or an hour in preparation time. And then you were honest, admirable. You were honest enough to tell him, look, I've not budgeted for this. I'm not necessarily that interested. One thing we spoke about last week was how when people hear you're not interested, they just drop you like a hat. So how were you treated when you gave that honesty?
I don't remember. And it was a polite call. I'm still in their ecosystem.
Okay.
I still receive their educational pieces, which is nice. There's some really top influential people there that post a lot of content online, which I follow. And everything they're doing and saying is right.
Yeah.
I just wasn't, and I'm not in the market to buy their services, and I dread to think how much money would have been spent on that. And I think moments like that, and I'm sure they've rectified it. I'm sure they're doing great now, and they're growing all the time. They've got this thing called Gongsters, and their employees are like loved, and they've got some obviously good retention there, clearly, and some advocates of the brand, but. I don't know. It's just stories like that make me want to help businesses
for sure
when they make a ballsy move like that in marketing and to sponsor the Super Bowl. Inevitably, you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of Googles on the spot for them to really qualify out early enough, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, whilst it's important to obviously look at people that have potentially not necessarily failed but done something not 100% correct, it's also important to admire and to take inspiration from those businesses that are doing it correctly. So I mean, what examples do you have of companies that you look up to that are doing a great job, and what can people take from that are watching?
Yeah, I think we used to work with Louise, Neil Murphy as well, Octopus. They're very much doing the right things, and I think they've got great following. They have great response with their engagements. They're very targeted and strategic on who they want to target. And you can see that, Adam Weeks as well at Big Tin Can, again, similar approach. It's more like, I'm going to build relationships with people who fit my ICP, who are representing really good brands, who are growing really fast as well. But they were patient. They didn't rush it. They were doing it at the right pace. And I think that's really important to mention, that you've got to have that patience when you make this change. We've got a situation right now with a client, which I'll probably come on to in a bit, but they're the opposite.
Okay.
They want more now, and I'm like, it's just
that lack of patience. Where do you think that stems from? The top?
Senior, yeah. It's got to be, because the reason why a client of ours who, I looked back at the Loom video, initial Loom video, and I've told them on this Loom, like, if you're looking for this type of company, we're not it.
Yeah.
But if you're patient, it's not going to happen within these 6 months, but let us really start to build momentum. And it's not quite quick enough for them, but actually it's, their CEO saying, well, what am I getting back?
Yeah.
How many appointments you're sitting and stuff. And it's actually, we've never said that. We never said you're going to get loads of appointments. And moments like this, I'm now having to go and speak to the CEO to really understand what we do, because it wasn't quite, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I didn't translate that well enough at the start. I don't know, but I'm going to find out, because it's important for me to still have that connection with even lapsed clients, for example, who potentially lapsed. I don't know yet. We might get them back, but there's someone whose the mindset is pressurized from the CEO.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that change in behavior then starts to go back, because they think, oh, the old way worked.
Yeah.
No, it worked temporarily, and then you got
Short-term,
pissed off with it. And then you then changed an agency. You did exactly the same thing again. They got a quick win, which was potluck. Yeah, like, let's not beat around the bush. It's, we hear it all the time. Oh yeah, got great opportunity from this company, and then all of a sudden there was nothing for the next 12 months. And it's because the mindset changed, the expectations changed, and actually it does take time. Yeah,
definitely. No, it's a really good answer, and an educational one as well. So yeah, thank you. I was going to ask for advice across the board for people that struggle with that patience, but I think an interesting route to go down would be actually what advice do you have for the marketers potentially that have to go to their CEOs, that have to go to their directors and try and convince them, because more often than not you might not go in at CEO level, you might have to speak to a marketer, a marketing director. So what advice do you have for those people that almost have to tell the story?
I think CEOs, they bring in marketers to provide them that educational bit that they don't know.
It's true.
And actually, if you're even at the interview stage, if you're having these honest conversations straight away, and you're saying that actually the last 7 marketing directors you've had have all done the same thing, they've ended up going. Why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Or marketing directors who were there, for the last 15 years because of the success that they built in the first 2 or 3. And they're still in that role because they think that works, and actually pumping up the resource. And actually, you need to be honest, you need to be open, you need to tell these directors and CEOs that not to expect the world from the efforts, but it will have its effects, without being big-headed to us. We're now at a time where we get people coming back to us that we've made the effort to nurture and build relationships with, and who have actually then said, now I'm ready.
Yeah. Personally, how does that make you feel when you get someone like that?
Buzzing.
Yeah.
Like when Jack comes round to me, and Jack's he's been our longest SDR, but he keeps the door open, and it's amazing how many people compliment him when they come through to me. But it's the people that then go, Jack, now I'm ready. Yeah, are like perfect, because it then demonstrates the hard work. I don't target Jack on number of opportunities. I target him on revenue, and quarterly targets and quarterly incentives, and this because it then teaches him to think more about the conversion rather than me just being in front of someone who wants to grow. I mean, who doesn't want to grow?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you ask that question, it's like, well, yeah, could always do with more business. You know what I mean? Like, and the amount of appointments I've sat over the years with someone who says, I agree to it because I could do with more business, and it's like, but then they're not willing to invest that money to get it back. Prime example today, this guy, 12 months, great vision. He wants just 3 discussions with businesses that could be it could be a customer of his.
Yep.
It would take 12 months later than that conversation, but within 12 months, he only wants 3 of these opportunities that would spend 500 grand each a year. Big companies we're talking about. It's going to be a huge ABM strategy involved as well. And I told him how much would he pay for that, and he said, "Well, I'd probably pay 1.5 million to get 3 clients paying 500 grand a year." And I was like, wow, it's going to be a lot less than that, so we're on the right track.
And what was his reaction to that?
He was like, well, I knew you weren't going to quote me. 1.5. I was thinking, damn, I lowballed. No, I'm still building that strategy for him. But right mindset.
Yeah.
Initially, like, gets the concepts.
Yeah.
But again, agreed to the conversation with us because of our approach. Yeah. We didn't bark. We didn't say we can get you 10 leads a week. Like,
yeah.
Get lost, mate.
Definitely. And one thing that you touched upon there, and by name you mentioned, and I guess gave praise to one of your employees, which is incredibly important. But I wondered on the other end of the scale of story, which we've spoken about again off camera, as an employee that you do have. Yeah. That wasn't targeted on revenue and things ended very badly. So it'd be great to hear about that, because I'm sure a lot of people that are watching that potentially were previous employees of companies like the one that we'll discuss will resonate with it as well. Yeah, I mean,
this is just shocking. So big SDR team, high volume demos booked per week. Manager who's very heavily targeted on number of demos for the sales team to then convert. Probably quite well, from what I've heard, most of the sales team converting at 1 in 8. Okay. SDR, newish to the business, 5 months in, now works for me. And I've done my research, so I know the truth behind it. This individual won top revenue SDR for 2 months in a row, which basically meant that his demos
were generating the most sales,
generating the most revenue. But he missed demo target, which was something like 1 or 2 a day, which is quite tough in my eyes to create intent opportunities at that level. And he got sacked. He got sacked for not hitting his demo target, but he was top revenue for 2 months in a row. Now, if I was the CEO of that business, I'll be like, what the fuck are we doing? Yeah. This guy, and like salespeople respected him, and you know, obviously you'd respect a salesperson you convert, and you probably convert now 1 in 3 with his types of opportunities, and it's because he's done both ends of the scale, and actually he understands what the salespeople want. He asks what the salespeople want. And you know, the pushback from an SDR manager is, well, you're not hitting your numbers. Well, yeah, I am, because I got the most revenue, and I think the thing is that maybe the seniors within these companies, if they were aware of stuff like this, they would then probably think differently about their strategy, and maybe that might be the shift that they need. I'm not going to go out of my way to tell them that. Like, there's no point. I think some companies need a big change before they even look at that, but. Yeah, I think pumping loads of resource and targeting high volume demos is just not the fix.
No, definitely. And I think you've got to look at that bigger picture as well. And again, so what are the repercussions of that? So not only have you lost an individual which is generating your company a lot of money, but also let's go deeper than that. Let's look at your future employees. There might be a review of the business and an ill-placed review. So it's really about that bigger picture, I would say. But I mean, how grateful is he now to go from a business like that's treated him like that to a business like Kerdos? Yeah,
I mean, he's quite an experienced guy, so we value him absolutely. But I think it's quite amazing when you get someone with experience in the telemarketing world or SDR, like whatever, if it's a phone-based, high-volume, demo-targeted role, it's amazing how to get them out of that mindset and to think differently and to really be open to that change themselves before that they actually then implement a change within a company. Yeah. Jack's a prime example of that. Our own SDR, very used to, he worked on a key campaign in his previous role, which meant he was working for a well-known brand, high volume numbers of hours. It would be full-time, and they would be targeted heavily on number of appointments. And it's like, and to get him away from that, to start thinking more revenue focused, was a long journey. It took, and actually at times I could see a little confusion in his face where he's like, hang a minute, so you don't want me to book you appointments? No, I don't want you to book me. And he's like, right, so what am I doing? And it's like, and it's amazing that we're at that stage with someone, and now if you speak to him, he's an advocate. He's like, no, we're doing it right, like, and here's why. And he'd probably better sell it to you better than I would. But
I mean, so similar to how I asked you earlier, how does that make you feel, seeing that transition of an employee that's come in potentially, I don't know, you could call it damaged goods to getting them to where they are today?
Yeah, good. I mean, without their experience in their previous roles, they'd and again, hats off to these guys. The training facilities in previous companies that they've worked at, is good. Yeah. But it does make me feel good when they've made that change successfully. And other agents here have also done the same. Managers that have come here, incredible how I had to really train that out of them, because again, it would be based on forecast of appointments and stuff like that, and it took me ages to train this out of people. But we've got a great induction program where we really get deep, and we actually teach this quite early on until it sinks in and they get it. The whole intent versus leads thing that we did, going the extra mile for your client, incentivizing them in different ways as well. We're a heavily retention focused company. And it's easy to say you are, but actually that's it. That's what we do.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a great explanation. I think it helps humanise the operation here, if that makes sense. Yeah. So people can hear about it, but to hear these stories, specific stories of your employees, is great.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, that's a great discussion. I would ask you, how would you kind of summarise the topic and summarise today's discussion for someone that wants a synopsis of what we've been speaking about?
Yeah, I think what people need to do is they need to reflect, speak to their customers, really understand, are we targeting the right people? Are we putting this resource into areas that actually is damaging our brand? And start to think about just becoming more human and thinking like the customer. I think as soon as you know what the customer wants and you think about the customer's needs, the whole pitch becomes different.
Okay.
And actually, we then get away from these high volume lead focused campaigns. You just because your competitor's spending $8,000 more than you on Google doesn't mean that they're winning more business. And actually thinking a bit different, become more educational, start to make an effort with your ICP, and it will eventually pay off to the point where you have people coming back to you and saying they're ready. A good example, me and Alex actually spoke to one of our clients today who we've been working with for 12 months this week, and unbelievable feedback. Like, team of my concerns were understanding us as a business, who we target, and trusting you to help me in this area that I need help with. And he's gone from a new business, no new business team, didn't have one in the past, it was all him, to now over £1 million worth of projected revenue within a year. We actually said you're probably not going to see anything in the first 12 months, but it's because we worked with his ideal client profile a lot.
Yeah.
We built relationships. We didn't try and focus on generating like an appointment or just a meeting for the sake of a meeting. Sure. We weren't passing him stuff that just had no intent to purchase from him. And we asked him about the highlight, and he said there was a turning period where we just got it. And that's the part that we tried to get to with all clients, where we got the right ICP, we're getting the right reaction from their target audience, and we're building intent opportunities which lead to £1 million, and this and actually if he joined us today, he'd probably be paying a bit more. I won't tell him that. But he spent probably about, I don't know, 50k with us so far to generate £1 million worth of projected pipeline, which is,
it's
for me,
not a bad return, is it?
And he reckons he's got more than that in the pipeline as well. So yeah, and just feedback was incredible, and hats off to the team for adopting that, trusting in that strategy, because now it's paying off, right?
Definitely, it's incredible to hear. Another great story. So I guess to kind of tie things up before I ask you any final thoughts, we're obviously rapidly approaching 2022, which is a scary thing to say in itself. So for business owners or for marketers that are thinking, actually, I'm weighing up my strategy for next year, I need to do this, I need to do that, there's a plethora of things to do. How important would you say mastering this intent, need, lead method would you say it is on a scale of 1 to 10?
Massively important. I think businesses will just continue to repeat the same things that they've always done for years, and actually the results will only become worse the more people that actually adopt this strategy before them. And if I would actually say, if you're not doing it, one of your competitors probably is, or starting to. And there's many things that we can do here to even start to make that change. First of all, get your marketing team, your sales team working together a bit more. Marketing to go and go to these discovery meetings with them, maybe really understand what they need to then convert the sale. Speak to potential customers, provide more educational stuff. Don't think, start to change away from this mindset because they've attended a webinar doesn't mean that they're going to buy yet is the big thing. There are ways that you can keep them in that ecosystem until they are ready to buy. We do it with email marketing, as long as it's not asking for something. Email marketing, I spoke to Force24, prime example of a company who's doing things right now. And they do email marketing automation, but it's all educational. Never any selling. Never do you want to book a demo. It was all about the customer and tips and pointers. And I reckon majority of their revenue probably come from people who have picked up on their educational piece and then gone, I'm probably ready for a chat now. So yeah, it's just marketing, sales, get that communication going, speak to your clients, start to make these changes now, before the new year. Review your qualification strategy. And I don't mean just the questions you ask. I mean the mindset of the SDR on the end of that phone, or the email campaign strategy and what it actually is aiming to do, or the ad spend and your lead forms online and your landing pages. Just think about, am I just capturing someone's information, or am I genuinely trying to create intent funnels right now? And I think that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. A great answer. Another great answer. And the one thing I would say just off the back of that is some of the methods that you've discussed were things that we were speaking about in more detail on the last episode. So if you've enjoyed that snippet and you want to learn more about that similar topic, then go back to the previous episode is what I would say.
Yeah.
Just to plug that in there. So yeah, as I asked last week, and just to finish, is there anything that we haven't discussed on topic, of course, that you wanted to put out there?
Yeah, I think actually the marketing directors who I speak to quite a lot, and it's getting that mindset change with their CEOs. There are lots of jobs out there there's lots of opportunities out there where a director will listen to you and actually probably need that advice and that honest opinion, and just try and speak to them. And I know how hard it is because you've been delivering, but if your numbers are 1 in 5, 1 in 8 in closing, and if you don't know that number, it means you're not talking to sales. But if you're closing at these even 1 in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you've got to get this communication going. You've got to start qualifying out more and start focusing on high volume lead generation and leads and responses, and just for the sake of someone's contact information.
Yeah.
And you've got to get away from that, because you'll be loved a lot more by the sales teams.
Definitely.
If their conversion is 1 in 2, 1 in 3. And for sure, your CEO will love you more if you can then prove that. And I understand that change in mindset is hard to persuade in some of these CEOs and MDs, but times have changed. Buyers are in more control than ever, and the whole spammy techniques that we're so used to for all these years are dying off.
Yeah.
And if you don't start to do it now, you never will.
100%. Great place to end. So
absolutely.
Another enjoyable episode. So I appreciate the time,
good,
and thank you.
I appreciate it.